Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Carol Eckert. I'll be your host today. I'm the co-chair of the Surface Design Association Exhibitions Committee. I'm a studio artist and also the creator of the Contemporary Basketry blog and book. SDA is a membership nonprofit focused on contemporary fiber and textile art. And I'm delighted to welcome you to today's program on Spaces Between. The Textile Talks webinars are brought to you by the International Quilt Museum, the Quilt Alliance, Studio Art Quilt Associates, and the Surface Design Association. As usual, we have the typical housekeeping announcements. Remember, this is a webinar, so your screens and mics aren't active. We're going to answer as many questions as we can get to at the end of the program. So please put those in the Q&A box at the bottom. If you want to activate the chat, you can activate that chat button and use that screen for greetings and comments. And as always, just remember to be respectful and courteous. And if you prefer not to see any notifications for the chat at all, just toggle it off. Spaces Between is SDA's annual juried member exhibition. It's currently at Florida CraftArt in St. Petersburg, where it will be on view till May 17th. It was a partnership. SDA worked in partnership with Florida CraftArt, who's been a tremendous partner for this exhibition. They are an organization and gallery in St. Petersburg, Florida. We'd especially like to thank their executive director, Jorge Vidal, and gallery director, Jessica Todd, along with the entire staff who's worked so hard to make this exhibition what it became. And it's really a wonderful exhibition. If you don't have a chance to see it in person, there are images on the SDA website and at Florida Crafts website. Part of the exhibition was made possible with the support of Mark Anderson and Keith Bucklew. Spaces Between exhibition explores edges, thresholds, and borders, whether cultural, environmental, psychological, or physical, and highlights work made with a fiber sensibility, including traditional and cross-disciplinary materials, techniques, and practices, as well as experimental processes and material innovation. Our juror was Akiko Kotani, who selected 30 artworks from more than 385 submissions. These works cultivate a deeper understanding of in-between spaces and what it can mean to navigate through and reside within them. For today's textile talk, we're delighted to include our juror, Akiko Kotani, who will share comments with us, as well as some of her own work. And later, we'll also welcome the award winners of the exhibition, Susan Lenz, Barbara Schulman, Julie Reuben, and Elaine McBride, who will tell us more about the concepts and processes behind their work. At this time, I'd like to welcome Akiko.
Hello.
Akiko was born in Oahu, Hawaii, received a BFA from the University of Hawaii and an MFA from Tyler School of Art. Kotani's work is held and exhibited in museum collections, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Baker Museum in Naples, Florida, and the Cleveland Museum of Art. During her career, she has received multiple prizes and honors, including the prestigious 2023 Florida Prize in Contemporary Craft. Akiko Kotani is represented by Leslie Curran Gallery in St. Petersburg, Florida. And so, Akiko, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Carol. I also want to thank Karina Bennett and your wonderful team of the Surface Design Association, and of course, Jorge Vidal of Florida CraftArt for asking me to judge this international exhibition, Spaces Between. Now, Jessica Todd worked her magic in placing the vast range of artworks, giving each piece to be viewed, each piece a place to be viewed and contemplated. Now, the artists included in this exhibition have utilized the idea of spaces between in myriad of ways, from philosophical to technical. It was a revelation to me from how this powerful concept could result in such fascinating new interpretations. Included are glorious works that honor the tradition of fiber art with remarkable skill and beauty, alongside works by innovators and those who push the boundaries of our medium. Now, artists are often known to be prescient before they themselves know that this potent condition is present in their work. Susan's work fits this description for me. At first, Barbara's work signaled caution. Indeed, it did echo the deep pain that is felt by viewing this intricately yet complexly stitched work. Julie, on the other hand, presents an inviting, justly proportioned work that invites the viewer to gaze at the hand-stitched curves that immediately lulls one into a reverie. Elaine's diminutive work of 3 by 5 inches offered a portrait of a young girl. This work is tiny compared to other works in the exhibition, but held a powerful presence. I hope you will delight in exploring each of their works in this exhibition and discovering those unique and intriguing spaces between. So this is the spaces between. This is my work that I will be showing to you. It will range from very early work, 1981, as you see, and this is my woven work. I started to weave very early on. The work that looks like a cross is called crossing. It's a double woven work that was done on the loom at the same time. The work to the left is called City Windows, and it is really a portrait of the windows that I had when I lived in Tribeca in New York City. The center weaving is a trigram that is taken from the I Ching. And now we have my combination of stitching on fiber. I really wanted to have my drawings and my fiber work to become one. And I believe in this period, I was able to do this, to do a great deal of drawings, as I call them, that are stitched on fabric. And now we are in 2013. I started to do crocheting. This is a series of works you will be seeing that are crocheted garbage bags, very large garbage bags to make very large works. And this particular work called Soft Walls were shown in, oh my goodness, about 7 different situations. And in each place that it was shown, in each gallery or museum, the work changed. As we all know as artists, that when you present the same work in a different environment, it will echo in a different way. This is at the MFA in St. Petersburg. Then being awarded the Artist Laureate in 2019, I presented Soft Walls, as you can see, in a very large space. This is also presented with a work that I called White Falls. And you will see a close-up of White Falls. It is panels now of crocheted plastic garbage bags. And you will notice that what I am doing now is I take the same panels and I am now presenting it in different environments. Sometimes I will title it in a different way because the proportions are very different. Now, for instance, this was a work that went up 20 feet. It is 20 feet by 20 feet, and I think it puddles on the floor about 15 feet. This is the same material done in red. Red Falls was shown at in Tampa at the Contemporary Art Museum, and it echoes woman's work, the color red. And it is about the dignity of abused women and how they keep living. They must, take care of their family. They have to go to work, and they really have such presence and such dignity. And this work really represents that. This is how it looks with other works in this museum. I did win the Florida Prize in Contemporary Art, where they choose 10 artists from all of Florida. And I would proudly say that there were 7 artists from Miami, because that, of course, is the hot spot in Florida. But I, from St. Petersburg, got the prize. So I felt really very good about that. Again, you see the presentation of the waterfalls and also the red falls in the background. Then you see Neon Forest, as I call it, at the Mabel and John Ringling Museum of Art. It is being shown in a different environment, and lo and behold, the curators were very clever. If you note the work on the wall, that is not my paintings, it's Elizabeth Condon's paintings, and it goes just beautifully. Now, this is, again, here we see White Falls in a different configuration with my friend Ju Wu's cut work on the wall. Now, this was a very beautiful exhibition. The Baker Museum gave me an entire gallery to fill. This work is a stitched bamboo threads on paper, and it's a series that celebrates the Bosphorus River. The different places that I remember traveling, and I taught in Istanbul for 2.5 years, and it was just such a glorious place to live. This is my last at the Chihuly collection It's called Burst. And I wanted to have a sense of water bursting out of the walls. And so hopefully I did that. And it is really my adventure into color. If you notice, I've used white, red, really monocolors, but now this is a whole array of different colors, which I enjoyed very much. Thank you very much. And I'd like to say that I am one of the 100 artists that was chosen for this book that has just been published by Lena Corwin of Abrams Book. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you, Akiko. That was just fantastic. I loved seeing that range of work, and it would just, I really don't have words. It's so inspirational, and the
Thank
size that you
you.
work with, it's really lovely. Thank you so much. So now what we'll do is move on to our award winners. And we have a presentation from each one. The first place award winner is Susan Lenz for Cemetery Flags. Susan is a fiber and mixed media artist, renowned for her ability to transform found objects into meticulously composed works of art. Her work has been featured in national publications, juried exhibitions, and esteemed fine craft shows, including the Philadelphia Museum of Art and Smithsonian Craft Shows. Susan is represented by Grovewood Gallery in Asheville, North Carolina. So Susan, it's all yours.
Hello, and thank you for having me on this program. And thank you, Akiko, for selecting my piece as a first place winner. I didn't seek to create this work. Like much of my work, I'm involved with giving second life to the discarded, obsolete, and thrown away objects that I happen to come across. And such was the occasion foraging for artificial flowers in cemetery dumpsters, but finding among all those blossoms all of these US flags, some tattered, some larger, some cotton, some polyester, and I knew that I needed to create something that expressed my amazement that someone's had thrown these things out. The work is about the space between life and death, what we throw out, what we keep, how we remember, and what we forget. And I wanted to remember every one of those veterans, despite not knowing who they were, by honoring the flag that had once marked their place. These are others of my pieces. During the pandemic, I started using all sorts of found objects in a quest to give second life to the substrata, parts, blocks, sections of vintage and antique quilts that were beyond their usefulness as a bed covering. And this series is continuing madly because the quest for all of these discarded items is as much fun as giving second life to the old sections of quilts. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. The second place award winner is Barbara Schulman for Black Plague. Barbara Schulman has exhibited throughout the United States, Korea, France, Canada, and the Philippines, and twice in the Art and Embassies program of the U.S. State Department. Her work is in numerous collections, including the Museum of Arts and Design, Allentown Art Museum, Lehigh Valley Health Network, American Express, Carolina Power and Light, and has been shown in Surface Design Journal, Fiber Arts Magazine, 500 baskets, and in 7 volumes of the Fiber Arts design books. So Barbara, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Akiko, for choosing me for the show and for an award. I do remember your older pieces with those great layers of organza with the stitching on them. I am not necessarily an artist who makes political work, but when I am angry, I start to think about tearing things apart. And I am basically a deconstructionist in my work. So that when on May 26, 2020, when George Floyd was murdered, I, in my fuming, or facing, it seemed like a crisis, we were getting to a crisis point in this country. I went to a closet where I had stored a stack of black jeans, which I had been saving for a long time. I knew that something would come to me for them. And I threw them all in a tub, threw bleach on them. And then the bleach did its work. It did some tearing, it did some color changing, and the bleach on black jeans bleaches down to these beautiful sort of gold and beige and brown colors. After the bleaching, I started to deconstruct the jeans, taking them apart seam by seam. And I love taking things apart. I am not a planner, so I didn't know what was going to happen. I just started placing small pieces together after the deconstruction and stitching them together, machine stitching. I knew I was going to begin to add names. So this was a research project that took many months for me. Up at the top of this piece, it says the Black Plague, and it also says something about Black lives lost by from law enforcement. So this was my research. I randomly put pieces together, randomly took them apart, and then much to my surprise, I found that there was a profile on this piece. And I love coincidences, and I often have coincidences in my work. But I don't look for them, they just come to me. So when I saw the profile of a person, I did grab right onto that and started to curve the top part so that it would become more head-like. On this piece, and my work is so detailed, you should look at it on my website to really see what's on there. There are the names of hundreds, maybe 300 people, mostly men, who have been killed by law enforcement, their ages, the city, and the date. In a few cases, I attempted to tell the story of their demise. And I was pretty furious through this whole thing, and I've got more notebooks. Do I want to continue this series? We'll see, maybe. It could go on and on, of course. Could I have the next slide, please? Yes, we are forces of chaos and anarchy. You can see I love bright color. I love putting little pieces together. And being that I do not sketch ahead of time, I might start painting, figurative a little bit. Not usually a figurative painter, but I do have an art school degree, so it came back to me that I knew how to paint figures. Piece on the left is composed of many art quilts that I made years before this. So on my website, there's a much smaller version of it, 30 by 30 inches. This is 45 by 45 inches. So I love taking apart things I've already made. I look at people's art and I think, I would love to take that apart, but I don't usually do that to other people's work unless they hand it to me. So my women on the piece on the left are not traditional. Some of them have too many eyes, maybe too many fingers. I don't see why a person needs to have 2 eyes. Why shouldn't they have 3 eyes? But I do think of these women as our protectors. They're like sorcerers or sorceresses. And I don't mind ripping something apart that I've already finished and moving it on into a new land. Piece on the right is way too detailed, so check that one out on my website. Again, this is called Stories of the Street, and it's a little bit graffiti-esque. You'll recognize a lot of the images on it from popular culture, like the We Can Do It woman. But please take a look at all of the detail online. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Barbara. Our next award winner is Julie Reuben for Ovum. Julie works with fabric and thread to explore the emotional impact of color, line, and shape. Her work has been featured in national and international quilt shows and has won a number of prizes. In addition to her work as a fiber artist, Reuben is a historian and university professor who lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Julie?
Hello, thank you so much. Thank you to the SDA and to the Florida CraftArt exhibit for putting together this wonderful show. And thank you to Akiko for including my work and acknowledging it with a prize. I'm very honored to be among such an amazing group of artists. It is really just an incredibly beautiful show. So as she said, I'm really interested in the emotional impact of color. I'm also very interested in perception, in the way that the thread makes the color of the fabric look different, and how the stitches join together to become lines and to become shapes. As you see here, and if you look at my Instagram, you'll see in much of my work, I'm really make the thread a key design element. In this work, which is called Ovum, you can see that there are 4 hollow oval shapes created by changing the color of the thread from a kind of oranges to purples. And I really loved the name ovum, because it's oval in Latin, and it just evokes so much. When I was showing this to friends, people would say, I see flowers, I see eggs, I see butterfly wings, and the oval shape is just so incredibly variable and can take on so many different meanings. And ovum also really kind of connects it to the idea of ovaries and to essentially kind of birth and creation. This piece is part of a series of pieces of 4 color quilts, most of them with this fairly simple design in the background of using 4, in this case, rectangles within rectangles in a color value progression. And in each of these, and this series, I explore sort of different things, how things work differently. In this case, the lightest shade is in the center, and the other pieces I've made, it's gone from dark out to light, and putting the light in the center really just pulls you in. I also did the stitching a little differently. I started in a kind of circular pattern and went around, which also kind of contributes to that, being kind of sucked into the piece. All of my stitching is freehand. I just, do it improvisationally. The only thing I mark is where I'm going to change the color of the thread to create those shapes. So you can change the slide. So as I said, a lot of my work, the stitching is the primary focus of it, and it interacts with the fabric in the background in sort of different ways. The yellow piece, which is also in the show, is called Choosing Calm, and it's a single piece of fabric. There's just lines of fly stitches across, and it's the color of the thread that makes the fabric look different. And in many ways, I think of myself as in some ways combining embroidery and quilting, because I use a lot of the stitching as an embroiderer would, rather than as a quilter would. And then the other piece here is called Teshuva, and it has two partial circles created by changing the thread from in the background lighter warm shades to actually in the background darker cool shades, and in the circles themselves, the lighter warm shades. And these two pieces sort of give a contrast. The ovum, which the first slide was, relatively simple piecing. Shoes and calm is, no piecing at all. And then Teshuva, a more complex piecing of which the stitching interacts with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. And then our next award is the SDA Award of Excellence that was given to Elaine McBride for Incredulous. So Elaine.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Akiko for selecting my work, to Carol for moderating, and SDA and all of the sponsors. I feel very grateful to be included in this exposition with all of the great works that I've seen. So my work is very, it's narrative. I've been doing these, I did the math for about 47 years. I started these in 1978 as a grad student. The themes and the sizes have changed a little bit over the years. And recently, including this piece, I have been digging through a cache of old family photographs. And I've always been haunted by this particular portrait of this young woman. Of course, it's in black and white, and then the edges all around her are fuzzy. So I just sort of wanted to pluck her out of obscurity and just try to imagine what she must be feeling. A lot of my work is about emotions. It's about a sense of history, a sense of place. So I wanted to put her in an environment, and the sort of the webbing that you see behind her, that's a take on a lot of crocheted and lace pieces that I found that my grandmother made when she was younger. She used to always do a lot of tatting, crochet, and I Xeroxed some of these and I saw this pattern emerge. So I played around with distorting the image that came out. And I just thought this was kind of an interesting way to tie this portrait with an antique textile technique that my family used. So I'm encasing her and having her sort of emerge and have this lace surround the figure. And I think incredulous just seemed to be the feeling that I was getting from her and what I wanted to portray her. The bird, I think, which I use quite a bit in my pieces. In this piece, for me, it reflects a dichotomy because she has this look of being incredulous, and the bird is this very sort of static, staid presence. And I find birds to be a very calming influence in my work, and I find that they seem to fit in the narratives quite a bit. So also the choice of color in this piece, I took a black and white photograph and tried to imagine a color that would sort of bring out also my feelings about this character. And this is what I came up with. I enjoyed this piece, I think, working on it because each piece takes me 3 months approximately to complete. And it's the process itself, which I enjoy, because as I start these pieces, they begin as a linear drawing on fabric. And through the choice of color and modulation of color with stitches, almost like painting with thread, I get a chance to look at these pieces and sort of realize them in a very slow manner. So there's no rush to this. I can make decisions as I go along. So I still am very enamored of this piece. It's one of my favorites that I've done. So I was happy to see her get selected for this exhibition. Do you want to go to the next slide, please? Okay, this is kind of a grouping of my more recent pieces. The one on the far right is, again, from the old catch of photographs that I had. That's me when I was 3 years old on our family farm. So a lot of my work has Midwestern themes running through it. Architectural elements that I see that reminds me of what, buildings that I saw on the farm or part of the house that we lived in. So in this piece, a free-range child descending from the porch, that's the door on our house. And again, playing with color, sort of choosing to make her gray, because I think the gray is a very neutral color. I don't think you can attribute too much one way or the other. So I like to make a lot of my characters, my narrative choices, using this color. The red in a lot of my pieces, they have red hair because I was a redhead in my former days. So that's probably indicative of being a ginger growing up. Again, the use of the lace and the design of lace distorted somewhat and encircling the character. The middle piece is another one that's also me, maybe 4 years old. This piece is called Flashbulb, and again, taken from an old crumpled black and white photograph that I found. The flash was a result of my dad, who used to be a farmer slash photographer. So we have a lot of pictures that he took in the course of his photographic, not a career actually, but it was his hobby. So the flashbulb reflected in this window that I'm standing by. Again, the color choice, it's all up to me because it was a black and white photograph, but I wanted to play with the idea of this flash of light and how it impacted illuminating the figure. Also, the idea of the architectural element that I mentioned before. This, again, the window was the window in the actual picture, but I'm sort of imagining the inside of the farmhouse, which no longer exists today. So it's more or less a ruin. And I wanted to give a little bit of dignity to this house that's now a ruin by having the flowers and the suggestion of brick, and then the darker background suggesting nighttime, and why the flash would be reflected. The piece on the left is a little bit of a departure, but as I look at this piece, it reminds me also of one of my sources, which is art history. I have a BA degree in art history, and one of my favorite periods as an art history student was Northern Renaissance art, and that would be Bruegel and Bosch and illuminated manuscripts, and a lot of the components of this piece, I can look back and I can say, oh yeah, I could see where I took that from. And that would include, again, sort of the line that vanishes, giving a sensation of space, having the figure in the foreground being much more distinct and the background being more fuzzy and obscured to sort of denote that it's in the background. A lot of the work from this period had a lot of disguised symbolism. And one of the elements that they used frequently, they used little dogs, which represented fidelity. So I just thought this was I had a little clay figure dog down in my studio. So I resurrected him and stitched him. Of course, coming from the Midwest, we were a farm that produced corn and soybeans. So I grew up with that as an emblem of a productive landscape. And the rose depicted by the vanishing point of the lines, again, to sort of depict a feeling of agriculture and a farm setting. Again, sort of representing my past and growing up and my sense of place. So I think in all, that's pretty representative of the kind of pieces that I do now. You can find it on my website. You can go through back to my very first piece that I ever created, which was from a Polaroid picture of two of my friends in grad school, and their names were Debbie and Bob, and they're holding a case of Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. So that's was my very first embroidery, and you can view it there. But thank you. That's pretty much what I have to say about those pieces at this point.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Elaine, and thank you to all the artists. I think it's one of the fascinating things about a theme like Spaces Between is that it brings together work from people with so many different approaches, and it makes for a very exciting exhibition. I love the sort of conversations the works have between themselves. One of the things that I've been thinking about, and it's also an issue that's come up in the chat, is the idea of scale. Because as we're looking at everything on the screen, we're seeing work all the same size. And of course, we have Elaine's pieces, which are more in the neighborhood of 4 inches, and Julie's, which are 40 inches or more. So Julie and Elaine, would you like to address that question of your chosen scale?
Shall I go? What I do is very low tech. I have an embroidery hoop, muslin, and needle and thread, and that's my medium. And my proximity of working, the piece is maybe 8 inches from my face. I've always been enamored of small scale things, miniatures, illuminated manuscripts in art history, and just very small pieces, jewelry. I have a sister who is a jeweler, and I'm very drawn to her work, and she also does narrative pieces on a very small scale. For me to work large, I've tried it. I used to print fabric yardage when I was a grad student at Northern. But I think once I tapped into working small, that was it for me. So that's what I appreciate. And I think I'd like to tackle something small, and I invite the viewer to come closer to look at it.
Yeah, thank you. I have been, since I'm trying to think about emotional impact, I think that in some ways, I'm not telling a specific story. I'm like I'm hoping to create a reaction, an interaction. And so I really like the idea of something that is large enough to draw you in, and something that has looks different from different points of view. So I want to have something that you can kind of see from afar, but also something that when you come and look close, you get to see all of that stitching and all of the small lines that create the larger image. So I really like that dual aspect of working on a larger scale. Of course, everything I do is hand done, and that puts some limits on what how big I've yet been able to go. The ovum piece is 54 inches by 45 inches, which is the biggest piece I've attempted so far. But I'd like to push myself to continue to think about how I can use scale to amplify that kind of emotional impact.
Oh, thank you. There's also a question in our Q&A that relates to Akiko's work, and I suppose this is, I think the artist or the questioner is asking perhaps as a practical matter. The question is, what do artists do with super huge pieces of art such as Akiko's? So obviously, super huge pieces of art as Akiko's have tremendous impact. But perhaps this is related to.
I am laughing because I remember I did produce large works like that in graduate school. And I remember one of my professors saying to me in review, those things can only be seen in museums. And I didn't know how to answer the professor, because all I could say was, well, I see them like that. That was my only statement. That's the only response that I could offer. And I thought, oh, I'll be out of here in a day, but I wasn't. So
There's also here a technical question for you, Akiko.
right.
How do you dye plastic?
I don't dye plastic. I purchase plastic. I've done white and I've done red, and I purchased them colored. Now the latter work is not in plastic, it's fabric. It is crepe satin. The works
Okay.
that are the works that are colored are in crepe satin. And I don't want to take too much time, but I send my bolts of fabric. It's bolts of 70 yards, 60 inches wide. I found a ribbon cutting factory, and they cut the bolts for me so I can crochet them.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, one of the thoughts that I had seeing these presentations is the question for Susan and Barbara about the emotional toll of working on these pieces that are so powerful. And they're also very labor intense. So this must mean hours, months, years maybe, immersed in the names of people who've been murdered, or thinking about the people whose graves the flags come from. So Susan and Barbara, how do you deal with that?
I'll go ahead first. I find it to be a very positive experience, despite the fact that, yeah, the veterans were dead. It was a cemetery. There's something wonderful about keeping a little memory alive. And as for my other work with found objects, I've often told people that it was being scarred as a child with repeated holiday viewings of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That entire island of misfit toys tore at my heart. And now the idea that I'm saving just a few things, whether it's can openers or lids, or a stash of souvenir spoons that ended up on a flea market that was collected and someone's treasures. I'm giving it second life. So there's that happiness that I find in salvaging just a few little things and not necessarily keeping their original memory alive, but keeping the object in front of real eyes. That's positive.
I think, Barbara, I think you're muted.
Okay, thank you. In November of 2016, I made a piece called Bullies in Hell. You can picture what I'm talking about or who I'm talking about. And that made me very happy. But working on the Black Plague did not make me happy. It was very emotional. I would dream about it. I would dream about the names of the people and where I can find more names. And so maybe for that reason, I haven't followed it up with an additional piece because I have another huge list of trans people who have been murdered. So I think that eventually I will get to that. But yes, it is more emotional than my usual work, which is so much more spontaneous and positive. It's tough.
So another question we have here is more practically focused. It's about displaying work, framed versus unframed, and if unframed, how are they mounted, such as Barbara Schulman's piece. Do you want to talk about that, Barbara?
I used to be a weaver, and I moved to Utah to take a new teaching position, and I immediately, when someone goes to Utah, they are impacted by the mountains and the sky, which are so amazing. And like everybody else in Utah, I started painting mountains. It's like, this is weaving mountains. Like, this is not really what I do. And I made a lot of very small embroidery floss weavings that were about 8 by 10 inches. And I put them in a show without frames, and they just looked like dumb little pieces of fabric flapping on the wall. So I framed them after the show. And yes, that was the presentation they needed. They needed that kind of impact. But as work gets larger, I like the idea of it not knowing any bounds, particularly something like the Black Plague, which I could add on to at any time and make larger. I really don't like framing my work, and I have done it. And really, let's be frank. If work is framed, it will sell easier, because one of the things that I periodically do is that I make work that is about 15 or 16 inches square, and I frame it, and then it's sold. So that's the practical view of that. But I really don't like dealing with frames or glass because I break things. So prefer not to do that.
I'd like to chime in here. I
Yeah.
just retired recently after 36 years of career owning my own custom picture framing shop. And framing is, and my piece is not framed, but I can honestly say that a lifetime of considering final presentations has affected the way I do work. I am always thinking of how it will be seen by an audience from the very first stitch. With the piece in this show, it was really easy. It's on a casket flag, one that was also discarded and found at a flea market for almost no money. But casket flags come with grommets because that's how they're usually hung. And so my piece is hung by the grommets that were already on the flag. But yes, framed pieces will generally sell faster. And I think that's because people they already know how to get it on the wall. And though a lot of artists don't like glass, it keeps the artwork from being getting dusty. And oftentimes with UV filtering glass, it protects the dyes that are used, especially on natural materials where the dyeing process is a surface rather than a chemical reaction.
Well, we actually had an interesting discussion in our practice session regarding framing, and it has to do with Elaine's work and Akiko's comments on installing it in the gallery. And I think that might be something everyone would be interested in.
Do you want me?
Yeah, I think Akiko and Elaine
I
both.
think, why don't we have Elaine just explain what she did? She did a beautiful explanation.
Well, the pieces, I've gone to a framer who I really who understands my work and how I want it displayed. But my pieces they're tiny and they're very stiff, but they do need some sort of a containment, I feel. So I have them consistently framed the same, just a small frame. I'm looking at one now to my side, that the piece is in the center and it's sort of like a black suede mat behind it. So there's no glare and it's a very shallow box, all black. And I think that that makes the piece stand out. And the fact that all of my pieces are framed, excuse me, consistently that way, I think you get beyond the piece actually being framed and you concentrate on the actual piece itself. I also do not use glass on my pieces because I feel that because they're so small, and even with the UV glass would protect it, I try to hang my pieces out of the light, and I want the thread not to be distorted by glass, just because of their size. So that's the way I keep them. And so far, my pieces have lasted, for quite a while. There's been no fading, and that's what works for me.
I felt that the way her work was presented, it was an extension of her work. And I think that, Susan, you will agree with me that any kind of framing is very important. It's very, very important to frame something, whatever it is, that it be an extension of the work, that it doesn't take away from the work. And I found this to be the case with Elaine's work. Also, there is a sense of having it enclosed in that way, that it's something to do with antiques. There's something very precious about the work. It's enclosed, but she made a decision not to put glass over it. So you have the sense of the beauty of the stitching. All of the decisions that she made to present the work, I felt that was in keeping and an extension of the work itself. So Susan, you can chime in because I know you saw the work.
Okay, this may sound rather arrogant, but any rule you can tell me about framing, I can successfully break. And that is also the case with a series of work. And I really liked your explanation, Elaine, about keeping a consistent presentation. Occasionally, though, especially if it would be a very muted, very white, or a very dark one, especially if it was very dark, it might not look great on that consistent presentation. And therefore, it would not necessarily, for that particular piece, be an extension of the work, but it would be consistent with the body of work.
So I guess I have a final question for Akiko. So many of us on this presentation today won't be able to see the work in person, the exhibition in person. Is there anything you would like us to know about it, Akiko, that we might miss just looking at images online?
Well, I would say that the people that showed their works today, it's a cross-section of what is being presented in the exhibition. Now Susan has seen the exhibition, so she can, also comment on it. But the works that were chosen, and I guess I chose them, are varied. Now the reason is because I'm a professor of art. So I've had a long tradition. I've done fiber work for many, many years. And I also love fiber work. I also love all kinds of artwork. It's not only limited to the fiber arts. And I find that what is being presented today in the soft materials, that's what I call it, is very exciting because it's rooted to me in women's work. Now, men also do work in fiber, and their presentation is really quite different. And it has a very, very interesting and a very, a more masculine, or wherever they may come from, that kind of feeling to it. But I would say that working in the soft material fields, it is very tricky to work with it and to make it fine art. And I think you can even ask the 4 people represented here. They can certainly comment on that as well.
So thank you so much. We're at the end of our time period. Thank you to all of our wonderful presenters and our sponsors. The recording will be available on SDA's YouTube channel and the Textile Talks YouTube playlist sometime next week. And next Wednesday, the Textile Talks hosts Paula Kovarik, sponsored by the International Quilt Museum. So thank you all for being here today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.